The sound of the knock echoed through the silent hallway, sharp and deliberate, like the hammer of a gun pulled back in slow motion. 3 solid thuds against the mahogany door. Not loud, but final. The kind of knock that makes the skin crawl before the mind can catch up. On the other side, a man sat at his polished glass desk, sipping whiskey older than most of his lives, unaware that his past had finally found its way home. He hadn't heard that knock in 13 years, because 13 years ago, he pulled the trigger that was supposed to silence it forever. But some ghosts don't rest in peace. They learn to knock back. Rewind the clock. My name was Major R. of Singh. Bravo Company. Classified missions. Loyalty, honor, and the flag stitched into my bones. But all of that meant nothing the day I bled into the dirt of a foreign jungle while the one man I called brother, Captain Karan Malhotra, walked away. He didn't flinch when he pulled the trigger. He didn't look back when I fell. He left me in the mud to die like a stray dog. But I didn't die. God didn't want me. And the devil wasn't ready. I woke up in a ditch 3 days later, lungs barely working, blood caked into the soil like rust on steel. My memory was shattered, just flashes. Gunfire. Screams. Karen's eyes locked onto mine. And then, that cold metallic click. My own service weapon. My own teammate. He shot me with my own damn gun. The rescue team that found me didn't ask questions. They didn't speak. I was flown back home under silence and sedation, dumped in a rehab facility like a broken machine. No questions. No medals. No one even filed the mission report. It was like I never existed. And when I asked for justice, command said I was hallucinating, said the trauma had created false memories. Karen? He was promoted, honored, decorated like a hero, standing at podiums while I learned to walk again, one shattered bone at a time. He took everything. My career, my identity, my family. My wife left me, believing the lies they told about my breakdown. My son stopped calling. I was a disgrace with a scarred body and a silent past. But I survived. And in that silence, something else was born. Not rage. Not madness. Precision. For 10 years, I trained in the dark. I rebuilt my body, my mind, my discipline. I learned the kind of skills they don't teach in training camps. Hacking. Surveillance. Disguises. Patience. I disappeared, so I could become something else. Not Major Singh. Not a soldier. But a shadow. And today, the shadow came knocking. He lives in Sector 9 now. High security. Imported guards. Retina scanners. Retired colonel turned CEO of a private defense conglomerate. Married again. 2 kids. A perfect life. A life he stole from me. And now I was standing at his door, wearing a courier's uniform, holding a metal case that wasn't mine, with a fake badge clipped to my chest and a real gun tucked behind my back. He wouldn't recognize me. Not right away. That's the beauty of being left for dead. You come back looking like a ghost. The door creaked open, and there he stood. Older, softer, comfortable. And then his eyes met mine. Something flickered. Something primal. Recognition? Guilt? Fear? We'll find out soon enough. Because I didn't come for revenge. Not yet. I came to make him remember. Because the worst kind of punishment is knowing it's coming. I smiled. Package for you, sir. He didn't blink. He took the case. He thanked me. And then I said it. Softly. The words that would haunt him from this moment until his last. You should have finished the job, Captain. He froze. And I walked away. But I knew the war had just begun. Before we were ghosts, before betrayal turned blood into rust, we were brothers. Not by birth, but by fire. Karen and I met at training camp. Same batch, same barracks. He was quick with a smile. I was quicker with a fist. Where I was the blade, he was the hand guiding it. Our bond was forged not in friendship, but in survival. We fought together, bled together, and swore we'd never leave each other behind. That promise aged badly. Back then, we were just boys trying to carve honor out of chaos. From the jungles of the Northeast to covert operations across enemy borders, we became the Army's silent thunder. Command called us the Twin Wolves. Karen had the politics. I had the discipline. He knew how to charm brass. I knew how to get things done. It worked until it didn't. It started with Operation Nightfall. Classified. Off the books. Just us and a five-man team dropped deep behind the line. Intel extraction, zero civilian contact, no margin for error. What we weren't told, we were expendable. The first ambush came on day 3. Landmines under dry leaves. 2 men gone in seconds. I still remember the heat on my face, the ringing in my ears, the taste of blood in my mouth. Karen pulled me behind a tree, saved my life. That day, but not for long. By day 6, we had what we came for, a hard drive packed with encrypted data, military movements, political names, things people would kill to bury. And someone did. On day 7, we were hunted like animals. That night, I caught Karen on the sat phone, whispering to someone. Coordinates. Numbers. Our location. I should have confronted him then. Should have asked why his eyes didn't flinch when the next attack came, why the evac chopper never showed, why every step forward felt like walking into a trap. But I didn't, because I still believed in the oath we made, even when we were the last 2 left standing, even when he said, "We have to split up," even when he handed me my own gun. The betrayal wasn't the shot. It was the look on his face when he pulled the trigger. No emotion, no hesitation, like he was putting down a dog. And when I fell, gasping, paralyzed from the waist down, I saw him walk away with the drive. Not a limp, not a scratch. He sold us out. I don't know to who, maybe the black market, maybe intelligence, maybe both. All I know is, Karen Malhotra came back a hero. I came back, nothing. The day I knocked on his door, I didn't just want him to remember. I wanted to see if he remembered. If he'd feel the weight of that night the second he saw my eyes. Because here's the thing about guilt, it lives in silence. It festers in quiet moments. And now, I wanted to fill his world with noise. I tailed him after I left his house. He thought I was gone, but I was everywhere. At his gym, watching from across the street. At his office, posing as a delivery man 2 days in a row. At his son's cricket match, hidden behind sunglasses and a camera lens. I wasn't just stalking him. I was building the pressure. Karen had built a life on control. Every move calculated. Every deal signed with a smile. But the thing about men like him, they don't know how to react when the shadows start breathing. By day 3, he stopped sleeping. By day 5, he changed his phone twice. By day 6, he installed new security cameras around his house. And by day 7, he hired a private bodyguard. That's when I knew he was scared. Not just suspicious, scared. Because guilt had a face now. Mine. I slipped a photo under his windshield one night. A photo from Operation Nightfall. Our whole unit. All 5 men. Smiling. On the back, I wrote, "You remember them yet?" The next day, I watched him tear it apart, hands shaking. But this wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was just the storm gathering. I needed him to question everything. To doubt everyone. To feel the paranoia he once sentenced me to. And it worked. That weekend, he canceled a business trip. Stopped seeing his mistress. Started walking with his back to the wall. But then something happened that even I didn't see coming. He fought back. That Monday, 2 men grabbed me in a parking lot. Professional. Fast. Black gloves, black car. Not government. Not police. Private. Karen style. They broke 3 of my ribs before I made them regret being born. I left one alive. Just long enough to whisper something in his ear. Tell your boss the next shot won't miss. That was the first move on the board. Now the game had begun. But Karen wasn't the only one with secrets. Because the truth about what happened in Operation Nightfall, the full truth, even he didn't know all of it. And when he finally finds out, he'll wish the bullet had done its job. They told us Operation Nightfall was about surveillance. In and out, they said. Gather intel. No enemy engagement unless necessary. But the jungle never listens. And neither do men who know too much. We were inserted at 0200 hours. 5 men. One objective. Retrieve a compromised drive from an abandoned rebel outpost near the Arunachal border. Intel leaked from inside the Ministry of Defense. Sensitive material. Names, operations, black budget transactions. Everything about it reeked of politics, not war. But we were soldiers. We didn't ask why. We just made sure the job got done. Karen led the mission. I executed it. Our team followed orders. Until the jungle swallowed us. The outpost was colder than expected. Empty, too empty. No bodies. No signs of struggle. Just dust on keyboards and coffee still warm in cups. Something had gone wrong here. Or worse, everything had gone exactly as planned. We found the drive tucked behind a loose panel beneath the main server desk. Labeled in red, Project 3UPATHI. No access codes. Just a fingerprint lock. Karen placed his finger on it, and it opened instantly. That was the first red flag. He shouldn't have had access. But I said nothing. Not when he tucked the drive into his vest instead of the black case. Not when he whispered to himself, "We're not dying for these people." Not when he made us take a longer, unfamiliar extraction route through enemy territory. The ambush came 2 hours later. Explosives tore through the jungle like fire in dry hay. The night screamed. Bullets sliced air. It wasn't a rebel attack. It was precision. Laser scopes. Triangulation. Satellite-guided. This was no rogue outfit. This was a cleanup job. And someone had scheduled us for disposal. We lost Lieutenant D'Souza first, cut down mid-signal call. Then came Veer and Roddy, caught between trees, their screams echoing through the canopy. That left 2 of us, me and Karen. Cornered. Bleeding. Trapped. Or so I thought. Karen led us into a ravine, told me to cover the rear while he secured higher ground. And that's when I heard the click. My own gun. I turned just in time to see him aim. And fire. The bullet didn't kill me. It shattered my shoulder, clipped my spine. The pain was white-hot. Blinding. I collapsed, unable to move. The last thing I saw before I blacked out. Karen walking away. No enemy in sight. No urgency. Just silence. And betrayal. Now I know why. Project 3UPATHI wasn't just a military archive. It was a leverage file. Details of arms deals between top-ranking officials and black market dealers. Bribes, payoffs, targeted political assassinations. And Karen? He wasn't just a pawn. He was a broker. Someone inside knew the mission would turn toxic. Karen was their insurance policy, planted to extract the drive, kill the team, and return the data to be sold to the highest bidder. He was supposed to clean the slate. But I lived. And I remembered everything. The moment I discovered the full contents of that drive, everything changed. Because it wasn't just names. It was video footage, audio logs. And in one grainy clip dated a week before nightfall, Karen sat across from a man in a general's uniform, laughing, clinking glasses, accepting a black envelope. And I realized something. Karen didn't betray us to survive. He betrayed us to rise. Present day, the pressure I'd applied to him was working, but I needed him to break. So I pushed further. Late one night, I hacked his home surveillance and broadcasted a recording on his own living room screen. Not a threat, a memory. The final audio log from our dead teammate, Lieutenant D'Souza, just before the ambush. In the background, Karen's voice. Calm, giving coordinates. Sending us to die. He smashed the screen with a whiskey bottle. Screamed at the walls. His wife ran out of the house with the kids. His guard quit the next day. And still, he didn't confess. Still, he tried to keep control. Men like Karen don't repent. They scramble. They erase. So I forced his hand. I leaked a redacted portion of the footage to a mid-tier military blog. Just enough to start whispers. Suddenly, old war dogs began calling. Old allies went quiet. And Karen knew. Someone was circling. That evening, I broke into his office. He had gone underground, temporarily. The house was empty, but the files weren't. I found a folder labeled Phoenix Protocol. Inside, flight details, offshore accounts, fake IDs, a plan to vanish. He was preparing to run, and that's exactly what I wanted. Because when a man runs, he makes mistakes. He leaves doors open, and I was already waiting behind the next one. But then something unexpected happened. Inside that same folder was my photo. Not old, not from the war, but from 2 weeks ago. Dated, tagged, labeled subject still alive. Directive, eliminate. It wasn't just Karen watching his back. Someone else knew I'd survived. Someone higher. Karen wasn't the only traitor. He was just the one wearing the cleanest suit. I stared at the folder. Then I saw something else. An envelope. Thick. Sealed. Handwritten. Inside, Photographs of my wife and son. Recent. Candid. Tracked. A note in block letters. Next time, we won't just leave you alive. I'd been so focused on vengeance. I forgot the rules of war. You never fight with your heart exposed. Now they knew where mine lived. And they were aiming. I had to move fast. Because the next shot wouldn't miss. Not me. Them. You think revenge is a straight line. Man wrongs you. You hunt him. You make him pay. But it's never that clean. Because when betrayal lives inside institutions, it's not a man you're hunting. It's a system. And systems don't bleed. I sat alone in an abandoned safe house. The kind where the light flickers even when the switch is off. Concrete walls, one steel door, and cameras in every corner. My body still throbbed from the parking lot beating, and my shoulder buzzed with old nerve damage from Karen's bullet all those years ago. The envelope lay in front of me. My wife's face. My son's school uniform. Their lives, now targets. I hadn't spoken to them in years. Not since the tribunal stripped me of my rank, declared me unstable, and buried my name under false diagnoses. I told them to move on. I pushed them away because I thought distance meant safety. But distance doesn't hide you from shadows. Especially when you're the one who dragged them into the light. I made the call I never thought I'd make. Not to her. To an old contact, Mira Awasthi, former cyber intelligence specialist, once buried deep inside the military's digital counterops. Brilliant. Disillusioned. Dangerous. She owed me a favor from a mission gone sideways in Belarus. She picked up on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd stop being dead, she said. I need protection, I told her. For you? No. For a woman and a boy. Civilian. She paused. That kind of protection costs a favor you won't come back from. I know. Mira set it in motion. By morning, my family was gone. Moved, relocated, given new IDs. I didn't ask where. I didn't need to know. All I needed was one thing. That they'd never have to know why. Because the war I was about to reignite, it wasn't for them. It was for the 4 bodies buried in an unmarked grave outside Guwahati. It was for the 23 surgeries I underwent alone. It was for the years they erased from my life like it was a typo on a report. And now, the silence they built was about to scream. The Phoenix Protocol folder revealed more than just Karen's exit plan. It included names, dates, accounts. One of them stood out, General Rajveer Bedi, retired. Ex-director of tactical ops. Decorated. Untouchable. He was the man in the grainy footage clinking glasses with Karen before the Nightfall betrayal. I always thought Karen acted alone, sold us out to make a deal. But no, he was following orders. And the orders came from the highest mouth. I needed to get to Bedi. But you don't just walk into a man's fortress and ask him about war crimes. You dismantle his world first, brick by brick. So I started leaking. Anonymous tips to war journals. Encrypted footage to freelance whistleblowers. Redacted names released through backdoors in veteran networks. A digital storm built in silence. And soon, the whispers turned to murmurs. Retired officers began asking questions. Old comrades started pulling files. Parliament members started poking at dusty classified drawers. The silence around Operation Nightfall was beginning to crack. And Bedi felt it. 2 nights later, a warning shot came. Not for me. For Mira. Her server farm in Kathmandu was hit by a team of 6. Elite. Lethal. She barely escaped with her life. Her entire database? Burned. They weren't trying to find me anymore. They were trying to erase everything. And anyone helping me. That made it personal. So I decided to return the gesture. Bedi was scheduled to speak at a veterans gala in Mumbai. Tight security, national press, public image at stake. The perfect opportunity to remind him, ghosts don't RSVP. I got in disguised as catering staff. No weapons. No threats. Just presence. When he stepped up to speak, I walked past the front row and dropped something at his feet. A silver flash drive. Labeled, Drupadi. Uncut, he didn't break stride. Years of command had taught him to mask fear with posture. But when our eyes met, just for a second, I saw it. Recognition. Not of me, but of what was coming. The next morning, Karen sent a message through one of his remaining proxies. For words, You don't understand this. I replied with 3. I never forgot. That same evening, Karen disappeared. No trace. No signals. No movement on his accounts. But I knew he hadn't run yet. He was circling, preparing his final move. Because men like him don't vanish. They reset. They erase one version of themselves to build another. But he underestimated one thing. I was no longer after punishment. I was after truth. And I wasn't alone anymore. Inside the flash drive I gave Beatty was something new, something even Mira hadn't seen. A secondary layer of Project Unauthorized files. Encrypted logs. One of them, a voice recording, dated 2 days before Operation Nightfall. Karen's voice, speaking to someone over a secure channel. Singh's loyalty is a problem. He won't understand. If he resists, I'll handle it. Then silence. Then another voice. Beatty's. If he lives, it's on you. I listened to that recording over and over again. Not because I needed proof, but because I needed to remember what I once was. And how close I'd come to dying for an ideal that meant nothing to the men who wore its medals. They didn't just betray a team. They betrayed a country. And now, the final chapter was about to begin. Because I knew where Karen would go. Not to his hideouts. Not to his overseas accounts. But to the one place he still believed he controlled. His father's farmhouse. The same one where we once spent a night hiding from enemy fire, laughing under the stars, bleeding side by side. He would go there. To feel in control. To remember who he used to be. But this time, I'd be waiting. And this time, I wouldn't miss. There's something sacred about a man's sanctuary. Not the office. Not the penthouse. Not the stage he parades on for applause. But that one place where the world doesn't follow. Where masks are dropped. Where the lies he built his life upon are kept out of sight. For Karen Malhotra, it was the farmhouse. Old, remote, perched on the edge of Nashik's vineyards. 10 acres of land, 1 rusted gate, a house that smelled like wood, sweat, and memory. We once spent a monsoon there. 2 soldiers on leave. 2 friends talking about a life beyond the battlefield. Wives, kids, futures. We drank too much that night. He told me, if I die before you, burn my uniforms. I don't want to be remembered as a man who only knew how to shoot. The irony? He didn't die, but I did. At least, the man I was, he's buried out there somewhere in the jungle. The one who came back. He doesn't forget. It took me 3 days to get past the new perimeter. Karen had the place outfitted since I last saw it. Thermal drones, 2 roaming guards, motion sensors at the East Ridge. He was expecting someone. Not me, maybe, but something. On the 3rd night, I cut the power. A clean snip through the underground cable feeding the house. The guards moved fast, professional. Too fast. Hired ex-commandos. Probably former black ops like me. I didn't kill them. Yet. Because tonight wasn't about blood. It was about the moment before. The precipice. The edge of justice before it becomes vengeance. I made it to the west window. Inside, Karen stood alone. No wife. No entourage. Just him. Pacing. He poured himself a drink, untouched. Sat in the old armchair where he used to read classified reports like bedtime stories. The files I'd leaked had finally caught up with him. His company had been suspended. Military contracts frozen. Pension under review. The world was catching up. And the man who once walked away from my blood-soaked body in a jungle now stared into his glass like it held answers. I stepped through the door without a sound. No gun. Just the weight of 13 years pressing against my chest. He turned. And for the first time, he looked old. Not weak. Just tired. But I didn't care. Because I had waited too long to speak the words now ready to rip out of my throat. You remember the tree you tied me to? I said. His eyes widened. That detail, that one specific memory, no one else knew. Because he didn't just shoot me. He tied me up. Left me like an animal. To suffer. Of course you do, I said. It was eucalyptus. Sap stuck to my face while I bled out. He reached for the table, slowly. Instinct. Old habit. But I was faster. I kicked the table away. The gun slid to the floor. No more lies, I told him. No more politics. Just you and me. Like it started. He exhaled. Sat back. You don't understand, Arif, he said quietly. Try me. He looked at me the way a man looks at his own reflection, like it's no longer familiar. I was ordered to do it. You were compromised. Command thought you'd seen too much. That you were questioning things you weren't supposed to. I was questioning you. He nodded. And they knew. Beatty, Raw, half of the Oversight Committee. Project 3 Upadi wasn't just intel. It was leverage. And you? You were the only one too straight to be bought. I stepped closer. And you were the one cheap enough to be sold. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. His silence was admission. You know, he said, eyes on mine. I thought about killing myself after the promotion. Why didn't you? Because they made me feel like a god. He laughed bitterly. They gave me medals. A company. Wealth. Influence. I became everything we said we hated. And I liked it. There it was. The truth. No excuses. No facade. Just decay. And I thought maybe, for a second, that justice was this moment. This confrontation. This unraveling. But then he said something I wasn't ready for. They're going to kill your son. My heart stopped. What? He stood now. Hands raised, slowly. You think you've won. But you didn't just go after me. You went after them. You shook the tree too hard. And now they're going to bury everyone you've ever loved. I stepped forward, grabbed his collar, yanked him close. You gave them my family's location? He shook his head. No. But they don't need me for that. They already have eyes everywhere. The minute you leaked that footage, they tagged your DNA. Your movement. You're not a ghost anymore. You're a beacon. I let him go. My mind raced. Mira had moved them. But how far? How secure? Was it enough? Had I sacrificed their peace just to win a personal war? Karen picked up the whiskey glass, drank deep, then looked at me. I deserve to die, he said. And for the first time, he sounded honest. But if you kill me now, you won't stop them. You'll just light the fuse. I stood there, gun now in my hand. So many nights, I imagined this moment. Ending him. Avenging the fallen. Putting a full stop where he left a scar. But now I realized he wasn't the final boss. He was just a gatekeeper. And the real monster was still in uniform. You don't get to die yet, I said. He blinked. I pulled a zip tie from my pocket, cuffed his hands, sat him down. You're going to help me take them down. He laughed. Bitter. Broken. You think they'll let me live? No, I said. But that's not the point. I pulled out a second flash drive. This one filled with everything. Names, recordings, kill orders, bank transfers, encrypted testimony from Mira, and raw files recovered from what's left of her server. The world would know, one way or another. And when it did, they'd come for both of us. But this time, I wouldn't be running. I'd be waiting. Because the game had changed. And the war? The war had just stepped out of the jungle. And into the city. Karen always said ghosts don't haunt places. They haunt people. Funny, coming from the man who turned me into one. But now, he was learning what that really meant. Because I wasn't just a shadow crawling out of his past. I was the echo of every buried lie. Every cover-up. Every decision he made to climb higher over corpses. And I wasn't done with him yet. We didn't leave the farmhouse until just before dawn. Karen was zip-tied in the back of a stolen SUV, hood over his head. Not for security. For control. He needed to feel powerless, for once in his carefully curated life. The air was cold. Dry. Quiet. Too quiet. I didn't trust it. The deeper I went into this operation, the more I understood. This wasn't just about one traitor, one bullet, or one dead unit. This was an entire machine built on silence, and I had just kicked it in the teeth. Now it was biting back. Our destination was an old storage facility in Pune. Off-grid. Leftover from an abandoned military tech program. Mira had retrofitted it with hardline comms, EMP shielding, and one untraceable server room. It was our fortress. It was also bait. Because the moment I uploaded the contents of the flash drive, every agency, every mercenary, every blood-stained bureaucrat with something to lose would zero in. But this time I was ready. Mira met us at the gate. She looked different. Hair shorter. Eyes sharper. No pleasantries. She just looked at Karen slumped in the back seat and said, "This him?" I nodded. She walked over, yanked the hood off, and slapped him across the face. "Welcome to your reckoning, Captain." Karen blinked against the floodlight. He didn't speak. Good. We strapped him to a steel chair inside the main room. Mira began her scan, biometric sweep, facial recognition, voice ID. We needed his authentication keys to unlock the deep portions of the Drupadi archive. His resistance lasted 7 minutes. A broken shoulder and a dislocated thumb later, he gave us everything. We decrypted the files. What we found made my stomach twist. There were names. Not just politicians or officers. Journalists. Doctors. Judges. People who were silenced. Discredited. Vanished. All marked as potential threats to continuity. Continuity. That's what they called it. As if democracy were a spreadsheet they could edit. Then we found the ops ledger. Over 300 entries. Nightfall was just one line in a sea of buried missions. Some successful. Some terminated. And then came the shock. My name. Listed under Directive 56B. Controlled termination. Asset category red. Target. Major Arif Singh. Threat level. Psychological instability. Risk. Exposure of high-level military corruption. Method. Field elimination via internal betrayal. Status. Executed. Executed. Not attempted. Not failed. Executed. They'd already written my obituary. Buried me with a lie. Closed the file. So whatever I was now, it wasn't just a ghost. It was an anomaly. A living glitch in their perfect system. And they would stop at nothing to erase me again. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the screen. The files were all there. Organized chaos. Mira could push the data out across 6 international nodes. Within minutes, the world would see. And yet, I hesitated. Because once that trigger was pulled, everything would burn. Karen, Beatty, every name in those files. But so would every single life connected to them, including mine. Karen spoke first. You think exposing this will fix anything? No, I said. But it'll end your version of the world. He smiled through bloodied lips. You kill the king, the generals replace him. You torch the castle, they build another one. You expose us, and they'll come back stronger. That's the difference between you and me, I said. I don't want to rule anything. I just want it to stop. Mira interrupted us. Motion sensors had picked up movement, half a mile out. 2 vehicles. Unmarked. No comms chatter. Stealth approach. I checked the CCTV. Tactical gear. Suppressed weapons. No insignia. Not cops. Not army. Wolves. Like us. But hunting me this time. We had 15 minutes. Maybe less. I turned to Karen. You know these men? He nodded once. They're called Unit Void. Built for one purpose. Containment. When a secret leaks, they erase the source. How many? Enough to burn this place down. Mira armed the defense grid. I grabbed my old sidearm. The one I hadn't touched since that jungle. Dog tags still wrapped around the grip. Faded. Scratched. I used to wear them with pride. Now, I left them on the table. Ghosts don't wear dog tags. The power cut out. EMP hit. They were inside the perimeter. 3 shots rang out from the east wing. One of Mira's drones exploded in static. Karen started laughing, quietly. They're not here for me, he said. They're here for you. I locked the chamber of my pistol. Then they came to the wrong funeral. I moved through the corridors like it was old muscle memory. Every breath measured. Every step mapped. The first one breached the north stairwell. I took him down clean. 2 in the chest, 1 in the mask. No time for guilt. The second came from the south, knife in hand. We danced in the dark. Steel on steel. I won. Just barely. By the time I reached the server room, Mira was down. Shot in the shoulder, still typing one-handed. The uplink was 70% complete. She looked at me, face pale. They cut the signal. I need another 5 minutes. I turned to the hallway. Footsteps. Many. Fast. The storm was coming. I sealed the door. Gave her my sidearm. Then turned to Karen, still strapped to the chair. Bleeding. Broken. He looked at me like he finally saw the man beneath the scars. Is this how it ends? He asked. No, I said. This is how it begins. I stepped into the hallway as the lights flickered red. Footsteps turned to gunfire. I didn't flinch. Because the thing about ghosts is, you can't kill what's already dead. And tonight, I was death in uniform. They came like shadows. Swift. Silent. Precise. Unit Void didn't announce itself. It didn't need to. These weren't just men trained to kill. They were trained to disappear what needed disappearing. But they'd made one mistake. They came for a man already erased. I crouched low behind the reinforced pillar just outside the server room. The emergency lights strobed red through the corridor, heartbeat rhythm, slow and heavy. Each pulse marked another second lost. Another inch they closed in. The smell of cordite hung thick in the air. Gunmetal and sweat. The hum of Mira's rig behind the sealed door was my only music now. Soft beeps and ticking upload counters. 91%. We just had to hold the line. The first two in Unit Void swept around the corner at 3 o'clock sharp, shoulders tight, eyes dead, trigger fingers already half pulled before they even saw me. They were textbook, but they weren't me. I fired first. The one on the left dropped before his brain realized he was dead. The second took a round to the leg, fell, rolled, fired back, but I was already gone. Moved down the hallway. Cut a corner. He never saw the blade coming. I didn't enjoy killing him, but I didn't regret it either. Some men bury truth in bullet holes. I was just digging it back up. Back in the server room, Mira screamed. Shot through the hand, her dominant hand. She refused to stop typing, even as blood soaked her keyboard, even as her breath turned to gasps. The file transfer blinked to 97%. 3% more, and the world would see them. But outside her door, hell was just beginning to boil. 2 more breachers came through the west hallway. One lobbed a flashbang. I closed my eyes just in time, but the sound still cracked my skull open. Ears ringing. Vision tilted. I stumbled. Felt a boot slam into my ribs. Dropped my gun. Rolled. Pure instinct. Just before the second blow landed. Scrambled for the knife on my ankle. Steel met flesh. The man gurgled something I didn't care to understand. The other lunged. Fist, not gun. Too personal. Too slow. I snapped his wrist mid-swing. He screamed. I silenced it with the butt of my sidearm. Pain blurred the edges of my focus, but I couldn't stop. I wasn't fighting to survive. I was fighting for truth. Back inside, Karen sat in the chair, eyes half closed, blood pooling at his feet. His lips moved. I stepped closer. I never wanted this, he said. I didn't answer. Because I didn't believe him. Because I didn't need to. Mira's voice cracked over the intercom. 5 seconds. The screen on her rig glowed brighter. Green across the board. Transfer bar full. Then, upload complete. And just like that, the silence snapped. We stood in the middle of a war zone. Blood on the floors. Spent shells scattered like confessions. But we had done it. The files were out. Unstoppable now. Every name. Every transaction. Every betrayal. The truth was in the wild. And now, the hunt would turn both ways. But Unit Void didn't get the memo. One last breacher came through. Different. Not tactical. Not efficient. Personal. He didn't wear a mask. Just black fatigues and a quiet smile. And in his hand, a small, handheld detonator. Mira's voice cut through my chest. Oh no. The man spoke softly, like a priest giving last rites. We always have a contingency, Major. My finger curled around the trigger. He raised the detonator higher. If we can't bury the secret, he smiled wider. We'll bury the storytellers. My gun barked 3 times. 1 shot to the shoulder. 1 to the leg. The last to the detonator. It exploded in his hand. Small, controlled. Enough to sever fingers. Not enough to trigger the full chain. I didn't breathe. Until I saw Mira still alive. Barely. Then sirens. Not military. Not mercenary. Police. Real ones. Mira had triggered a failsafe ping to Interpol nodes in Europe, and someone had responded. A miracle. Or maybe the world finally had its ears open. 2 black vans. 10 armed officers. 1 medic unit. Too little. Too late. But still proof. Proof that when truth bleeds loud enough, even silence runs out of hiding places. They arrested Karen. Not because I asked them to, but because the files named him as the first domino. They didn't know who I was. They didn't need to. I vanished before the backup teams arrived. Mira stayed. She would testify. She would survive. Because she had become something even stronger than a hacker. She had become a witness. Later that night, I stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. bandages around my ribs, bruised knuckles, and a body that didn't feel like mine anymore. But I was breathing. I was free. And for the first time in 13 years, I wasn't just surviving. That's when the message came. Encrypted. From an unknown number. 6 words. General Beatty requests a meeting. Alone. I stared at the screen. I should have turned it off. Should have walked away. But I couldn't. Because behind Karen was Beatty. And behind Beatty was something even darker. I thought the war was over. I was wrong. That knock at Karen's door? That was just my way in. Now, I was at the gates of something far bigger. And the man waiting for me was the one who ordered my execution. Time to knock again. Truth is like fire. If you bury it too deep, too long, it doesn't die. It explodes. And General Rajveer Beatty? He'd been sitting on a volcano for over a decade. Now it was cracking under his boots. The encrypted message blinked back at me from my burner phone. General Beatty requests a meeting. Alone. No address. No time. Just a reply link. One touch would send him confirmation. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because if Beatty wanted to speak to the ghost he'd tried to erase, it wasn't curiosity. It was damage control. But I wasn't walking into a trap. Not without lighting a few of my own. Mira was in a safe location now. Off the grid. Wounds stitched, identity wiped clean. The files had gone viral within hours. Drupadi was trending in digital backchannels. Every name on the list was either denying, hiding, or vanishing. Karen was under heavy custody, and the storm he tried to outrun had arrived. But Beatty? He hadn't run. He sent me an invitation. Because men like him don't run from fire. They command it. 3 days passed before I replied. I sent one word back. Speak. The meeting was set for midnight. Coordinates led to a decommissioned helipad outside Mainsar, an old military strip surrounded by nothing but dust and memory. Perfect for a man who thrived in shadows. Perfect for a man like me to finally put him in the light. I arrived an hour early, dressed in civilian clothes. No weapons in hand, but a mic wired into my jacket, streaming everything back to Mira's secure cloud. Beatty would expect me to be cautious. He wouldn't expect me to have already broken through 3 of his firewalls and decrypted half his legacy accounts. By the time we met, I already knew more about him than he'd want written on his grave. But still, I needed to see him, face to face. The helicopter landed exactly on time. No guards, no escort, just him. General Rajveer Beatty. Gray hair, perfect posture, the face of honor, with eyes like rusted steel. He walked toward me with the grace of a man who had signed death orders over morning tea. When he stopped, he didn't speak right away. He looked at me like I was some antique photograph come to life. Arif Singh, he finally said, his voice smooth as polished stone. I was told you were loyal. I underestimated how loyal. I said nothing. He smiled. You've cost us a great deal of trouble. Us, I repeated. So you're not the only ghost still pulling the strings. No one pulls strings anymore, he replied. They build networks. They own silence. You, of all people, should understand that. I understand betrayal. He raised a brow. No, you understand emotion. That's why you failed. I stepped forward, slowly. Remind me, I said, voice low. Which part of failing includes exposing the biggest covert operation scandal in modern military history? He didn't flinch. Exposing and dismantling aren't the same thing. I stared at him, measured, calculated, then asked the question I had carried for 13 years. Why did you order my execution? He paused, then gave the answer like it was a weather report. You wouldn't compromise. That's it. You were too clean, too honest. You cared too much for rules, too little for results. And Karen, useful, corruptible, hungry. I shook my head. You built a system on traitors. He looked past me, into the empty night. I built a system that worked. You think wars are won by noble men? No, Major. Wars are won by men willing to do what's necessary. He took a step closer now. Do you know what's happened since you released those files? For intelligence operations compromised. A foreign alliance suspended. We lost 2 diplomats in an accident. You didn't bring justice. You brought chaos. I clenched my jaw. If exposing truth causes collapse, Then maybe the system deserved to fall. He smiled. Cold. Empty. That's why you'll always be a soldier. Never a general. Then he did something that caught me off guard. He pulled out a folder. Thick. Yellow. Stamped in red. Dropped it at my feet. Inside are documents clearing your name. Restoration of your rank. Full honors. Even compensation for lost years. And what do you want in return? Silence. There it was. His final weapon. Not a bullet, but peace. The one thing I hadn't felt in years. All I had to do was walk away. Close the file. Disappear again. He read the temptation in my eyes. You've done enough damage, Singh. Be remembered as the man who survived. Not the man who couldn't let go. But I had let go. Of the army. Of the honors. Of the man I used to be. What I hadn't let go of was truth. Because behind every uniform lies a lie. And men like Beatty? They wear their lies like armor. But even armor rusts. I picked up the folder. Opened it. Looked at the papers inside. Then looked at him. No deal. He tilted his head. You think the public will protect you now? The media? The courts? They forget faster than they forgive. I'm not hiding anymore, I said. I'm witnessing. He smiled. Soft. Pitying. I give you a week, he said. Then turned back toward his chopper. But I wasn't done. I called out over the blades. One last thing, General. He paused. You remember Operation Crimson Dust? His eyes flickered. Just slightly. That wasn't me, he said too quickly. I know, I replied. It was your wife. He turned, face drained. I smiled. You built a kingdom on secrets. I just learned how to burn the walls. The chopper lifted. He disappeared into the night sky. But I knew one thing. He was rattled. And rattled men make mistakes. The storm had reached the top. Now it would all come crashing down. Not with vengeance, but with evidence. Because truth is patient. And justice? Justice has a longer memory than a general's ledger. The night after I faced General Beatty was the first I didn't sleep. Not from fear, but from the weight of everything that hadn't been said. Because revenge ends with a shot. But justice echoes. And it never stops whispering. The files were out. The press was circling. Public pressure was rising. But justice doesn't come on a deadline. It crawls through bureaucracy, molasses thick and painfully slow. The news cycle grabbed the Drupadi leak with hungry teeth. Headlines lit up screens for 2 days straight. Then came the denial campaigns. Disinformation bots. Doctored interviews. Sources claimed footage manipulated. Operation Nightfall was fabricated by a rogue former soldier. General Beatty, decorated patriot under attack from enemies of the state. They spun lies faster than we could shout the truth. The public? Divided. Half outraged. Half distracted. And in the middle of it, I was still a ghost. Mira sent word from her new safe house in Sri Lanka. She was alive, recovering, but scared. They're still moving, she warned me. They've lost the narrative, so now they'll try to control it. You exposed the skeletons, Arif. Now they'll bury the coffin with you inside. She was right. The system couldn't absorb the blow, so it needed to absorb me. 2 days later, I got an anonymous message. 6 photos. Time-stamped. Live. My son. Walking out of his school. Alone. A different car following him each day. The message underneath was simple. You want a legacy? You're about to leave one. That was their move. I'd gone after their empire. Now they were going after my blood. And the thing about ghosts? We can be hunted, but we never forget the faces of those who threaten what little we have left. I made the hardest call of my life. I told Mira to move them again. New identities. New country. New life. And this time, no contact. No trail. No way back. She hesitated. You won't even know if they're okay. I'd rather never see them, I said, than bury them because I couldn't let go. That night, I burned every photo I had left of my past life. The uniform, the medals, even the original dog tags. I kept only one thing. A worn, blood-stained field notebook, Lieutenant D'Souza's journal from Operation Nightfall. It had survived the ambush, just like me, and it still smelled of smoke. Inside, he'd written something I hadn't noticed before. A single sentence scribbled between coordinates. If we die, let the truth bury the traitors, not us. It hit me like a final order. A promise between brothers never delivered. Until now. The next morning, I broke into the military archive vault in Delhi. I used a stolen clearance badge from a former colonel, one who'd resigned quietly the week after the leaks went public. I wasn't just stealing records. I was finding roots. Every operation Beatty touched, every cleanup Karen orchestrated, every signed directive with a death toll. I scanned thousands of pages, backed them into a remote drive. Every mission had a pattern. Every mission had a signature. And every signature traced back to a single source. Operation Crimson Dust. The one Beatty denied too quickly. The one I knew wasn't officially sanctioned. A mission in 2008, erased from the books, linked to the deaths of 3 whistleblowers and a civilian journalist. The target list? Not insurgents. Not terrorists. Truth-tellers. Beatty hadn't just greenlit the mission. He funded it with private contracts. He outsourced death to avoid military audits. But the most damning piece? A transfer order. From a Swiss account to an offshore fund in the Maldives. Signed not by Beatty, but by his wife, Ishita Beatty. She was a former intelligence officer. Her record? Clean. Too clean. Like someone had polished her history. She had the reach. She had the motive. And suddenly, the general's fear made sense. Because in the empire of shadows, Beatty wasn't king. He was a figurehead. The real power was sitting beside him at dinner. I sent Mira the documents. She cracked the financial network in 4 hours. Funds linked to shell companies. Private arms deals. Silencing campaigns run through third parties. And at the center, a single command note, named only as, Mother. You were never the target, Mira told me. You were the variable. The error they couldn't code around. I laughed bitterly. They should have checked their math. Now, everything had changed. This wasn't about Karen. Or Beatty. Not even the ministry. This was a machine. Built on layers of lies. Managed by puppeteers who never showed their face. But now I had one. Ishita Beatty. A woman who made men like Karen disposable. A woman who wore widowhood in pearls and silence. And I knew exactly where to find her. I booked a one-way ticket to Geneva. Her favorite villa. Unlisted. Paid in cash. Secured through diplomatic immunity. No guards. Because power doesn't feel fear. It breeds it. As the plane took off, I stared out the window. The sun was setting behind the clouds, casting the sky in blood orange. It reminded me of that night in the jungle. The last time I watched a sky like this. I was a dead man. Now, I was the one coming back. To end what they tried to finish. And this time, I wasn't knocking. I was kicking the door in. The plane landed in Geneva under a sky so still, it felt staged. Not a cloud. Not a breeze. Like the world was holding its breath, just waiting for me to exhale violence. I stepped out into the cold with one bag. No weapons. Just a flash drive taped to the inside of my coat, a fake passport in the lining, and a steel resolve that had outlived bullets. I wasn't here to make noise. I was here to end the silence that had protected monsters. Ishita Beatty lived 20 minutes outside the city in a lakeside villa that overlooked calm waters and old sins. Private security? Minimal. Cameras? Vintage, analog. No drones. No motion-triggered gates. Because when you've lived your whole life above suspicion, you stop worrying about being watched. But I wasn't watching. I was remembering. I'd seen her once. Years ago. At a ceremony honoring Karen after nightfall. She stood beside General Beatty. Elegant. Cold. The kind of stillness that comes not from grace, but calculation. That night, I thought she was just a loyal wife. Now I knew better. She wasn't the woman behind the general. She was the woman above him. I watched the villa for 3 hours before making my move. No patrols. Just one car pulling into the driveway every morning. A black sedan with diplomatic plates. One driver. No guards. The perfect window. At 8:15 a.m., I entered. Not through the front gate. Through the lake. Wetsuit. Silent breather. Knife tucked at my ankle. I emerged from the reeds and scaled the dock like a shadow. The villa's rear entrance was unlocked. Because why would a queen fear an army that still saluted her? I walked through polished marble floors and velvet silence. No alarms. No panic. Just the ticking of a grandfather clock somewhere deep inside the house. Then a voice, clear and calm. "You're dripping on my rug, Major Singh." She was sitting in a high-backed chair by the fireplace, a porcelain cup in her hand. No fear in her eyes, just interest, like a cat watching a dying mouse try to scream. I stepped closer, leaving a trail of wet footprints. "You knew I'd come," I said. She nodded slightly. "I was hoping you'd make it past Rajveer. He always did underestimate emotional men." I didn't sit. I didn't blink. "I've exposed everything. You can't hide behind offshore accounts anymore. You're finished." She smiled. "You misunderstand, Major. Exposure is not execution. The world is full of inconvenient truths. People forget. People move on." Her eyes locked with mine. "But you're memorable." I reached into my coat, pulled out the flash drive, tossed it onto the glass table beside her. "Every account, every directive, every death. You think the world will forget that?" She looked down at it, didn't flinch. "You've delivered the fire. Now what?" And then she said it. "What is your price, Major?" I didn't answer right away, because part of me, just for a moment, wanted a price. Not money, not rank, but peace. To stop running, to stop bleeding, to go find my son and live the life they stole. But that dream died the day Karen pulled the trigger. "There's no price," I said finally. She sipped her tea. "There's always a price. You just haven't named it yet." She leaned back and spoke softly, like a lullaby sung over graves. "You think this ends with me? I'm not the monster. I'm the wall keeping the bigger monsters from noticing you. If I fall, they don't just erase you. They erase your lineage." She tilted her head. "Your son is alive, yes? Safe. Somewhere." My hand twitched. Jaw locked. She smiled. "There it is. Your price." In that moment, I realized something chilling. She wasn't negotiating. She was testing me. She'd been doing this for decades, measuring threats, weaponizing morality, identifying the line men wouldn't cross, and standing just behind it. I stepped forward, pulled the fireplace poker from its stand, and brought it down hard, not on her, but on the flash drive. Steel snapped. Plastic cracked. Her eyes widened for the first time. "You think I brought the real one?" I said. She said nothing. I leaned close. "There's 11 copies. In 5 countries. Linked to 3 journalists with 48-hour dead man switches." I pointed to the fireplace. "That was theater. This is war." And for the first time, I saw it. Not fear, but calculation. She knew she'd lost control of the story, and she hated it. "You've made your move," she said coldly. "Now watch how the board retaliates." I turned away. "I'm counting on it." As I left the villa, she didn't try to stop me. No guards chased me. No bullets whistled through the air. Because she knew. It was too late for that. The next day, a leaked video hit international news. A military tribunal hearing. Hidden camera footage. Rajveer Bedi, hands trembling, forced to answer for covert operations under his signature. The media flooded in. Governments started inquiries. Old soldiers resurfaced with stories no one had dared to tell. The empire was cracking. And from the cracks, truth poured like smoke. But smoke doesn't cleanse. It chokes. Because justice? Justice demands something more. Something final. That night, I got the call. Mira's voice, shaken. "Arif, it's Karen." "What about him?" "He's dead." I didn't breathe. She continued. "Hanged in his cell. No witnesses. Camera malfunction. Ruled a suicide." But we both knew. It wasn't. That was Ishita's move. A warning. A message. A silencing. Not of Karen, but of me. Because the thing about war is, it doesn't end when the shooting stops. It ends when the last man willing to remember finally forgets. And I had just been reminded they weren't done. Not with me. Not yet. I stood outside an old apartment in Marseille. Sea breeze in the air. Salt, smoke, and something colder. The hallway was narrow. Dim, quiet. Just me and the door. Behind it, my son. I hadn't seen him in 8 years. He was 11 when I disappeared. When the system labeled me unstable. Dishonored. Dead. Now he was 19. Living under a new name. New country. New mother, if he still called her that. Mira had done her job. She kept him safe. But safety always comes at the price of silence. I raised my hand to knock. Paused. Because I wasn't sure anymore what I was fighting for. Revenge had turned into exposure. Exposure had turned into survival. And now survival meant giving up the only thing I had left of the man I used to be. I didn't knock. I slipped an envelope under the door. Inside, a photo. Me and his mother, taken long before the betrayal, before the blood, before the uniform became a target. On the back, 5 words. Your father never stopped fighting. Then I walked away, down the stairs, through the alley, back into the life of ghosts. Because some wars don't end with reunions. They end with quiet exits. 3 hours later, I received an alert on my satellite phone. Emergency ping from Mira. Encrypted code. Level red. Immediate action. I opened the message. It wasn't a warning. It was a location. A private island off the coast of Oman. No public maps. Owned through 5 shell companies. Codename, Mothergate. My blood turned to stone. I knew what it meant. Ishita Beatty wasn't hiding. She was fortifying. While the world looked at tribunals, arrests, and headlines, she had moved her operation offshore. Digital infrastructure, financial assets, personnel, a reset. She was cutting her losses, rebuilding the empire from the shadows. And this time, no cameras, no files, no witnesses, unless I became one. I prepped for 3 days. Black market contacts in Istanbul got me what I needed. Oxygen tanks, explosives, 2 custom drones, 1 rifle, 1 knife, 1 promise. I infiltrated the island under moonlight. Low tide, 0 current. The place looked like paradise from a distance. White sand, glass towers, palms swaying like everything was innocent. But underneath, concrete bunkers, private guards, steel doors coded to retinal scanners. And somewhere inside, her. I disabled the perimeter drones first. Then the fiber lines. Cut power just long enough to trigger protocol lockdown. And in the confusion, I slipped through the front gate dressed as one of their own. Security passed me with a nod. Because in a world of masks, the most invisible man is the one wearing a uniform. I made it to the central compound undetected. Inside, servers, surveillance hubs, and a room labeled Asset Terminal, G1. I breached it with explosives. Fast. Loud. No turning back now. The room was empty, except for a single tablet, already unlocked. A video file played automatically. Ishita Beatty appeared on screen, seated in a white room, smiling faintly. Major Singh, she said calmly. If you're watching this, then congratulations. You finally found me. Or so you think. She tilted her head. I evacuated this facility 2 days ago. Burned every trace. Transferred all operations. This island is just a corpse, left behind for you to dig up. Her smile widened. But I do have a gift for you. The screen flickered. Switched. A live feed. My son. Bound. Gagged. Sitting in the corner of an unfamiliar room. Blood on his temple. Camera time-stamped. 10 minutes ago. Then the screen cut to black. For words remained. The door is closing. My hands clenched. Bile rose in my throat. She had found him. Despite Mira. Despite the distance. Despite everything. But she'd made a mistake. One fatal mistake. She thought threatening my son again would break me. But it did the opposite. It made things crystal clear. This wasn't about exposing anymore. It wasn't about burning systems or rewriting narratives. It was about ending her. I set the charges across the island. 10-time blasts. Every critical node. The server rooms. The armory. The landing pad. Then I left through the water I came from. Not quietly. Loudly. Because I wanted the world to see the smoke. Because sometimes, justice isn't a court ruling. It's ashes. By sunrise, Mothergate was gone. Reduced to black smoke and sinking stone. I called Mira. Told her everything. The boy on the feed wasn't her hostage. It was a decoy. An old image. Deep fake. Manipulated. She didn't have him. Not yet. But the message was clear. She was hunting. And I had less time than ever. Mira traced the signal of the feed to one last location. A hidden facility. One more door. And this time, it wasn't between me and my past. It was between my son and her bullet. I packed light. No hesitation. Because the moment she put his life on the line, she erased every rule I had left. This isn't about ghosts anymore, or soldiers, or traitors. This is a father, with nothing left to lose, and a gun, pointed straight at the devil's throat. The door's still closed, but not for long. I'm already at the steps, and this time, I'm not knocking. The facility was buried beneath the dirt of no nation. Not on maps, not in whispers, just coordinates Mira pulled from the final triangulation. A kill box, designed not for battle, but for silence. If I died here, no one would know. But if I succeeded here, everyone would. It took 40 hours to reach it. Half the journey in disguise. The other half underground, riding an ex-military tunnel used once during a war most forgot. I had no backup, no plan B, only one name, Ishita Beatty, and only one reason to walk into her final lair. My son. The compound was carved into rock, masked by a fake mineral plant. Radiation warnings. Static interference. The perfect place to hide a final act. I breached the fence at 2:16 a.m. 3 sentries down. 2 more bypassed. No alarms. Because arrogance is louder than caution. Inside, it wasn't chaos. It was order. Sterile hallways. Whispers over comms. Cameras sweeping left to right like clockwork. But I've been studying this rhythm for weeks. And I moved between the seconds. I reached the inner corridor. Bio level 5, restricted. The access panel blinked red. I didn't wait. 2 well-placed charges blew the mechanism clean off. Alarm screamed. The hallway flooded red. And now, everyone inside knew I had arrived. Gunfire tore through the dark. I dropped low, rolled behind a support beam. 2 guards came around the corner. Black helmets, silenced rifles. I moved before they exhaled. 1 shot each. No words. Only velocity. I turned the final corner, and there it was. A glass room, brightly lit, soundproof. And inside my son, unharmed, tied to a chair, eyes locked on mine. No fear, just the echo of recognition. And behind him, her, Ishita Beatty, wearing white, like she was at a ceremony, like death was beneath her. I stepped inside, gun raised. No more threats. No more tapes. End this. She didn't flinch. She walked forward, straight into the barrel of my pistol. You won, she said. You destroyed my empire. You exposed my networks. You made them fear your name. I tightened my grip. But you never changed the rules, Major. She gestured to the screen behind her. Live feed. A switch, tied to a remote explosives rig beneath my son's chair. Deadman's switch. Her finger hovered over it. You shoot me, she said, and we both lose. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Wrong, I said. You forgot one thing. She tilted her head. I tapped my ear. Mira says hello. Her face fell. Because Mira had cracked the encryption, rerouted the signal, rewired the feed. That switch. It wasn't real anymore. It was hers. I pulled the trigger. 1 shot. Right between the eyes. Ishita fell before she understood the meaning of losing. The chair deactivated. The locks disengaged. And my son stood up. Free. We didn't speak right away. We didn't need to. Because sometimes, love is silent. But survival? That speaks in blood. We left that place behind. Empty. Broken. A tomb for the old world. And as we walked into the sunrise, father and son, he asked me one thing. Are we safe now? I looked at him and answered honestly, no. But we're free. If you watched till the end. If you felt the weight of every betrayal, every shot, every choice, then do one thing for this story. Like, comment, share it with someone who still believes in justice, and subscribe for more powerful stories where the ghosts finally knock back. Because this war is fiction, but the lies it's based on aren't. Story is finished.